Okay, everyone, welcome to the code book. This study, we're going to be covering pages 45 through 62. I am starting off with codification and getting started. Does anyone have any questions or comments on what we covered about codification or about your own personal code?
Sorry, so I'll repeat the question.
I was just saying, do we have anyone have any thoughts, questions on codification? The first portion we read before we get into area one.
Yeah. Did you want to go?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I really liked this section in terms of like figuring out a code in terms like what I liked if at the bottom of page 46, it's like it says like do this regardless of opposition, non-support and or lack of skill. Continue trying to do your best, constantly study what you may be doing that needs correcting, constantly seek the logic and the most constructive use of it. Keep reminding yourself that from all evidence, your reason for existence is to produce justice and correctness. And I really liked that part. I like this whole section. And what like a notes I wrote is like the importance of like just like slowing down and how our society right now glorifies people who like just have a answer and come up with whatever instead of like people who don't know it but like will do the work to figure it out even if it's like a slow process. I like that, and I think that is like really important in terms of like not always trying to pretend like you know everything and that you have solutions.
Mm. Yeah, thanks for that, Ash. I think this is a really like validating thing to read because it puts like I hate to I hate to say this, but I think it puts, you know, it makes you the doer. It allows you to like um do something that you think is going to be constructive or plan out doing something that you think is going to be constructive, and just if it's something worth doing, that you should be able to produce enough energy, time and energy to do what you want to do if it has constructive value. So that's what I really liked about this, and about you having to do it whether it's supported or not, through non-support, through through hostility, through everything. Just keep attempting to do what you're trying to do, which is a really really potent thing to be introduced to. I really really like this because I think this is a maybe a simple thing that escapes many many people
Hi, Eleanor.
and victims.
I'm on a call.
So he said, the code says there's reason to believe that logic was produced at the same time that the universe was produced. There's reason to believe that there is a best way and a worst way to do or say everything that can be done or said. There's reason to believe that the use of logic can help a person find the answer to each question by asking more questions, including questions about the answer. Every time you have a problem, think about all of the different ways that you can probably solve that problem. Study each of these ways and try what appears to be the very best solution to that problem. If the very best of what you try produces a constructive result, regard that result as code for that specific problem. Codify everything that you say or do. So this is a good time to give some examples of how we have been attempting to codify like ourselves and the things that we do, the way that we think and behave. So anyone want to try to answer that question?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on that. That part was very helpful for me because, I hear that word being tossed around, codify, but I don't believe I really understood it until that section. So unfortunately, for me, I have not been codifying, things that work and do not work. So that's definitely something I need to be practicing on. And even, I don't know if that this is the right word, but experimenting with, learning and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. I think in the past, I have been very skeptical or even frightened of trying, experimenting, seeing what works and what doesn't. So definitely somewhere that I need to improve on is, codifying my behaviors and thought, speech, and etc.
Yeah, what I think is so interesting is that when you read like the second paragraph of Swa read, it sounds so simple and like logical, but because of like living under white supremacy, I feel like things that are simple that make sense, like having a problem, taking like stopping and thinking and then like reflecting afterwards and applying that as a code is like such a simple thing, and yet because of the way our society is, the way we can't even sit for a second or are allowed to sit for a second, we don't even realize how simple it is to solve certain problems. So I liked that, like, because people always say, oh, take the time to reflect, but sometimes I feel like we're so like dumbed down that we need specific instructions. Because like if someone tells me take the time to reflect, my mind's gonna go all different types of ways. So.
Yeah, your mind
And
gonna
just
start dwelling into like all that's wrong instead of trying to correct it and try to figure out the things that you could do right.
Yeah, and just to add to what Chris and Ash were saying, I know we're giving off like what we've been doing to be codified or what hasn't been done, but just to add, I think one of the things that I struggle with now is like I can be codified by my lonesome, but when someone else is involved, that's when the issue starts to arise. Because it's this constant battle between the other person not being codified and not trying to be or practicing and bringing their toxicness into my life. And it's just like trying to stay codified is like where I'm trying to continue this process. It's like staying codified every single time and it's being able to walk away. I've been doing that. I love doing that. Not responding and walking away. I'm not interested. Not interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ray, I resonate with what you just said, especially because I've only been really thinking about these things since the pandemic started. And so I feel like that's also cut off a lot of interactions I would have maybe from other people who aren't on code. So I really don't know what that will look like. And I think it's going to be really different to be on code while I'm lucky enough to work from home and be in control of my immediate environment versus when I'm out or my friends want to do things that maybe it'll be safe to do them, but I don't think it's productive. So, yeah.
Yeah, I struggle with that too. Like, just even I have to go to my family's house every like couple of weeks, and that is really, really hard for me because I feel like I'm also the type of person who would rather a situation be cohesive and not speak my mind. And I think that that's something I need to work on in terms of, because if I really want to be on code, I have to be like, you know what, this conversation right now is not constructive. You're just talking in circles. But it's like, I'm so apprehensive to do it because I have like this avoidance of conflict. So, yeah.
Mm. One way I like to give an example of how I've like integrated a code into my routine, to my life. I have many codes that I'm currently practicing, and one of them is I have like a war routine, I call it, in my head. I wake up and I understand that I have been captured. I am a prisoner of war, and it doesn't serve me to be a sick captive or an unhealthy captive. So I work out every morning, and then I have lots of vegetables. lots of fruits. I put lots of fruits and veggies into my body, all in order to prevent myself from, becoming sickly or being unable to produce constructive thoughts. Because I've learned that when I don't work out and when I don't put constructive things with minimum poison and maximum nutritional value in my body, I see the results as being destructive. So that's one way I practice code in my risings. But yeah. Anyone else like to share?
I can add to that. One thing that I was doing previously was I made an effort to get some sunlight at least for 30 minutes a day. But since I've recently moved, well, I was getting sunlight because I understand that sunlight's important. Everyone's lacking vitamin D when you don't get sunlight. A lot of things can happen to you. So, I was making an effort to get sunlight daily, but since I recently relocated or got dislocated, I have been unable to get that sunlight as normally as I have. I think that's maybe why I've been feeling so overwhelmed. So I was codified in doing that, I guess I would say, but I haven't had the chance to do it anymore as much as I would like to.
And then another things I would like to add as well, you brought the sunlight, is there's a part in the book that goes on and talks about like our time and energy spent, and with
let's wait till we get to area 1 because we all have that. I want to get through the codification.
Okay.
I have something to add regarding the codification. With COVID, this is like a good time to work on improving that because one thing I've done is like under COVID, when people ask like how I'm doing, I'll just say I'm here. Part of the reason for that is people disappear for 2 weeks at a time now. And so that's become my response under COVID, is just saying I'm here when asked how I'm doing. Another thing, like on the workplace and like on the plantation, I work on a plantation where, you get like high fives and fist bumps and stuff. One of my codes now under COVID is I'll just say COVID and I'll leave the person hanging. Write poorly is one of my favorite answers on how I'm doing, but I can't use that answer with my mother. So I have to say good or all right. So that's like just some of the codes like I've come to use. So
are you saying write poorly or quite poorly?
Write poorly.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I really like the write poorly because it's like under white supremacy, you're supposed to be doing poorly. Like that's how it's set up.
Well, in a powerless position, yes.
Oh, and one other code that I've done under COVID is I don't do anything at night. If you're a Black person moving around at 9 o'clock at night, more than likely it's something that's not good out there, and you don't have any sort of help coming. So yeah, nothing done at night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's very, very constructive codes. Mm-hmm.
Would it be considered, this is Ben, would it be considered to be a coding to be working on some other legislation now, coming to find out that domestic terrorism there's no law against it. And we're in the middle of, the war being reignited, and we're just over here asleep. We don't realize that we've been under attack since this country's inception, and now they're doing it very blatantly. So yeah, I think that's like a crisis and an emergency. That should be our top concern, to wake people up to because their minds are being codified right now by showing you this is what we do to white people, this is what we do to black people. And you know, what are we saying? What are we doing? What are we, I mean, about it? I don't see much being done about it. I see a lot of talk, but I don't see much being done about it. What we're doing right here is a start. I just had to throw that in. I don't know if it's relevant.
Alrighty, so does everyone understand what it means to be united? Well, what the United Independent Compensatory Code System is, what the concept means?
Yeah, I understood it, but for me, I had like some confusion parts. Just because I'm wondering, like, there can be many instances where like the independent contradicts the united, and like they can be conflicting. So like, how do we compensate for that? Right? Because people are going to have deviations from the code, and that deviation may be like significant to someone else's if it's like independent. So that part confused me, because it's like we have to come to some, like, is there going to be like at least some base that we all have to agree on?
Dr. Sankey, would you like to chime in?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to, if I could add some possibly constructive information to that, because that was a similar thought that I had when I first read the code some years ago. But the unique thing about that, the best thing about that, right? It seems like it's contradictory, but in reality, because you're united, you operate as a united independent. It means that you're your own leader, right? And you're also at the same time your own follower. So the objective of the code actually is not just to follow it, but to also make your own codes. You know, and if you look at the code, the way it's presented in the form of suggestions. So all of us don't have to agree on what parts of the code we're going to follow, but we can agree that we're following the code. So we're united in the fact that we're practicing the code, but we could be independent in which parts of the code we choose to follow. And it also works the same way with, I'm not sure if you guys have come across, have you got into the word guide yet?
I have access to the word guide, and so does Dan.
Okay, well, is anybody familiar with victims guaranteed qualifications?
Oh yeah, most of us in here are, and
Okay, good. So in case there's ever an argument, right? Somebody says, no, you need to follow this part of the code. And they said, no, I'm following this part. That's where victims guaranteed qualifications comes in, because you say, well, look, brother, sister, I'm VGQ. You know, it nips it in the bud. The objective here, I think, what Mr. Fuller was doing when he wrote that part was to help us solve one of the very major problems that we've had collectively in this movement, you know, the Black Power movement or the Black Conscious movement, or whatever you want to call it. There's always been this disunity. There's always been, you know, no, brother, you need to follow Islam. No, brother, you need to follow, you need to be Hebrew Israelite. No, you need to be, you know, everybody's got all these different so-called solutions, and they're really just practicing the four-wall method and don't even realize it. But I'm gonna leave it there. I hope I've given you enough.
yeah, and I would like to give an example. Like some people could be on code right now, and they may not feel like what we're doing is of constructive value, but some people may disagree. So it's victims give the qualification, and we choose your own code and apply what you see fit to be constructive in order. Hopefully, the end game is producing justice. I would say, yeah, the code is here to produce justice.
I guess
Yeah,
I have like, oh, go ahead, Ezekiel or Clayton.
yeah. I just wanted to add. For me, I understand. The United Independent to be given an example. We're united under solving the problem of racism and white supremacy, and we independently work towards solving that goal. So, like Dr. Sinki was saying, we would choose, maybe areas or parts of the code to use to solve that problem, but we are all united. At the end of the day, we're all united, but under the with the common goal of solving the major problem on the planet, which is racism and white supremacy. That's how I understand the United Independent.
That was really helpful, Ezekiel. Thank you. And Dr. Singh, that helped a lot.
You're welcome.
Does anyone have any comments about the compensatory counter-racist codification, or anything you'd like to read?
Yeah, I had a comment. If I'm talking too much, someone else can go. But okay. So at the top of 47, he says, to the basic means through which the people of the known universe as individual persons think, speak, and or act in order to compensate for those things which they as individual persons judge to be missing, that they have judged to be of value. And I was wondering, like, if you could apply it to wherever you are now, like, what are some ways that you can compensate currently? Like, for example, Swan and I, or sorry, O5 and I used to live in like a food desert. And so one of the ways of like we were thinking of compensating was like providing like smoothies for like a smoothie stand at the park or something. So I was just wondering, like, what ways were you, like, what things that you see that are missing that you think you can compensate?
The first part that first area that comes to my life will be education. Teaching others about racism, white supremacy, and letting them, show them these books and providing these resources for them.
Oh yeah, like Ray was saying, education. So I find that this book club to be, one of the things that I judge to be missing, a knowledge of racism and white supremacy. So using this book club as a means to, educate people, or at least provide them with the resources or the means of understanding racism and white supremacy. I hope I didn't confuse anybody with that.
Just so I'm clear, Ash, can you rephrase, say the question again?
Like, what do you independently see missing around you, and how can you compensate for it, like within the near future?
Dang, I see.
I think Sandra.
Sandra, you want to go?
Yeah, I see education as definitely being something that's missing. And when I say education, one of the main things that I'm speaking of is the fact that a lot of our history has been changed. So since what the kids are learning in school isn't all true, I think that children need extra education to be able to begin to comprehend the level of white supremacy that's going on in our nation. I also think that adequate shelter is a huge problem right now. Just from looking around, California was a huge problem here in Vegas area. it's starting to get to become a pretty big problem. I can see outside. One of the main problems I see is people on the streets with disabilities, visible disabilities, unable to walk, people with prosthetic leg, people that are having a seizure on the street, and obviously higher numbers of those people being non-whites. So I think that without adequate shelter, it's very easy to lose hope, and it's very hard to retain the appropriate education that you would need to comprehend the system that's going over most people's heads today.
Dang. To compensate for what's missing around me, I think the best thing to do is to work to create produce a system of justice, and I think that's what I spend the majority of my time attempting to do or thinking about. I think it's one of the healthiest obsessions I've had. Um, Also, just a small compensation I've been able to do recently. I feel Black victims sometimes they lack real conversations where they're actually being responded to with logic or being asked like logical questions. So if I see one of my oldest associates like participating in non-constructive things through the digital waves, I'll just see if I can spark up a conversation with them. And I did that last night with someone, and I used that as a time to just show by example to show that I was also very destructive, and I told him how my beneficial my new lifestyle is, and he was you know he was receptive to it. But that's just an example.
Yeah, I love what Sandra brought up. Thank you for that. And to stop the bloodletting in the neighborhoods, we need to emphasize the the value, the history, of course, the true history, firstly, and the value of melanin and how valuable and beautiful it is, so that when the youngsters grow up, it will be impossible for them to look at another Black face because they'll be in love with Black instead of conditioned to hate Black. So that's one of the things, the bloodletting in the neighborhoods. And I know in Oakland, I heard this is pretty bad in LA, Chicago, New York, the major cities. It's just like off the charts. Somebody just got murdered in West Oakland last night. Oh man, there was 1,000 Black people out there over the weekend doing a sideshow and discharging automatic AR-15s right on East 14th Street in Oakland. Man, it's just almost to a point of anarchy, and it's those 4 points that we'll get to later. But thanks.
I would say that's just racist white supremacy 101. That's not going to stop until the system has been replaced. The so-called bloodletting, I believe. I want to read this part from the code. I think this is a good way for the people who like to believe in this imaginary thing called an ally. I think this is a good way to test your so-called allyship. So the code says white people can, in parentheses, in quotation, white people can help by giving and not withholding any information that is of constructive value. Everything that each white person does that is of constructive value should at all times include at least 3 non-white people functioning as persons of equal value and receiving equal benefits. So that's just something that I think people should take an extra note of. If you find yourself in some kind of organization where you have so-called allies around you. You know, just test this, see if everyone is receiving equal benefits, and see if they're actually working to produce justice.
Yeah, I thought that part was pretty interesting. Not pretty interesting, but it was every time I'm reading something like this, because always white people come up, whenever you're talking to other victims about this, about stuff like this or the code, I say, well, what about white people? I understand that, that white people can fall in the powerful class or the powerless class. But I bring that up because it's kind of different from what Dr. Welsing said, right? That white people can do, or how white people can help like other non-white people. She said, that white people need to tell black people what they're saying what white people are saying when black people aren't around, compared to what Neely, what the code says do. And I like both of those, right? I like both of those definite those instructions, I would say. I think I would probably use the code more often because that seems to be more constructive, at least not more constructive, but at least more tangible.
But I think it's the same thing.
Yeah, they're both constructive.
Because she says that they have to tell people, like white people have to tell each other what they're saying behind other people's back, and that's what the code is saying, is by not withholding information. I think that's just like an example of not withholding information.
Oh, I see. Okay, that makes sense. And they are essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
I think we have a hand raised over.
Dr. Singh, can you just chime in whenever you have
Okay, I was just trying to be
yeah, we understand. I understand.
Trying to be more constructive with not cutting anybody off or anything like that. But after I raised my hand, I think Ash already said what I was gonna kind of say. But I just want Kwaku to know that Dr. Welsing got that from Mr. Fuller. That information about wanting to know what white people are saying when there's no black people around, she got that from him. I don't know if you know much about the history of them, but do you know that how they met and how he introduced her to the code?
I know like pieces. So I'm sure if you have some like a more I don't know, more put together.
So there's a lecture I have on my YouTube channel. I have a brief part of the lecture that Dr. Wilson was giving when she was talking about how she met Mr. Fuller. But she basically said that she had like that voice in her heart, like a voice that just kept telling her, you need to go to a Black Power meeting. You need to go to a Black Power meeting. And she always put it off. And she said one day, finally, she would go to one. A Black Power committee meeting is what she said. So she went to the meeting. She heard a bunch of people, talking and saying the same old usual stuff. And then she heard somebody in the back of the room say, racism is a system. And that was Mr. Fuller. So she said from that moment on, what did she say? She used that saying. She said, when the student is ready, how's it? The teacher will appear, something like that. Yeah. So from that moment on, she started allowing Mr. Fuller to educate her into the code. And then what she did was decided to take the code and apply that to what she learned in psychiatry. Now, the one difference between the two of them that she states, and Mr. Fuller has said it on many occasions as well, is that Dr. Welsing wanted to find out why racism came about. She wanted to know why did white people do what they did, to non-white people, as opposed to Mr. Fuller said, basically that's a waste of time. Just figure out what it is, how it works, so you can dismantle it. So that's where the VGQ comes in between the two of them. But pretty much on everything else, they agree on.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yep, exactly. And I think both are really important, the why and what to do.
Absolutely, I agree.
Do we want to talk about open air versus four walls. Um,
Yeah, the only thing that I would, ask about that is how do you like classify what we're doing here? Is this open air or four walls?
mm,
And, I'm in four walls right now, but, it's not,
yeah, like I would say this probably falls under open air, but it could be somewhere in between. But I think how many so-called how many four wall methods were I don't know, were really, really I don't know how many four wall methods were truly about producing justice and following a code, practicing code. And I could be incorrect in this thinking, but you know,
Can I say something?
yeah, go.
Okay, I just want to say that I noticed too in my studies of the code, one thing that's going to have to happen is in order for us to learn the code and teach the code to others, you kind of have to start off with the four walls. You could do open air as well, but you kind of got to start off in the four walls because, like you said, we're in the four walls right now. But it's kind of a combination of the two because you got those other factors in the four wall method, like collecting dues and getting members and all that kind of stuff. We don't have to do. We could do away with that. And then to kind of answer your question, some of those four wall groups that I know of that I was actually a part of, the Nation of Islam, the Black Panther, the new Black Panther Party, and then the National Alliance for Black Panthers, and a whole bunch of other groups, smaller groups in between that I've been involved in college and all kinds of stuff like that. And they've all pretty much been a waste of time because we didn't really have a code. We didn't really have a code. It was more or less, I mean, there are some codes that we use, like the FOI had a code that we followed to regulate like a military, but the main objective for all of these groups was to collect dues, collect money and increase the membership. And a lot of times we'd be misled into believing that that was what was going to solve the problem. Like, because we'd never get the amount of members, or the amount of money that it was said that was needed to solve the problem, right? Now, one of the things that I came to the conclusion was when it comes to United Independent, right? The way we could get things done is, say, one of us comes up with a project and we reach out to other United Independents and say, hey, look, these are the goals and objectives of this project. This is how long we're estimating this project to be. And, can you reach out? We kind of have like a network where you just reach out to other people who have the skills to help you with that project that's going to solve the problem. And then, after the project's done, everybody goes back to, another project or something along those lines,
Thank you for that. Because that was my question, was like, how do you organize in an open air method? Like, how do you organize a project or something? Like, how do you pool resources to do something without having like a central system? And I feel like that answered the question for me. But I agree. I feel like it has to be, at least in the beginning, a mixture of both. Because in the beginning, like he even says, like the major weakness of the open air method is that there's going to be so much like resistance, and people are literally only going to do it out of immediate desperation. Which so because I've been in organizations that had a mixture too like that, and you see the people who kind of like join out of desperation and then leave when like they don't need it anymore or something.
Exactly.
So I really liked that part. Like, what else was I gonna say? But I was wondering too, like, how do you make sure that work is kind of like allocated equally? so that or does it even have to be, is it even gonna be allocated equally because people are not gonna be connected the same way they are in a four walls method?
I know how you can allocate work equally on paper, but usually when I've worked in projects, and I'm not talking, I've never worked on I've worked on a few projects with some other United Independents, but they were like really small projects. That was just something on the internet that was done, took us a couple of hours, but just working with people, with projects that, just solving problems for clients. It always seems to be most of the responsibility is taken by a few in the project, while there's others who kind of just tend to just slack, So I don't know myself in reality how to, be able to solve that problem to make sure that everybody is allocated equals amount of work or whatever. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I feel like what's going on here is, unique, because it's like we got together without a four wall method, and we haven't, we don't have meeting dues or anything of the sort. But I don't, to answer Ash's question, I don't know how that can be done, because it seems in order for the open air method to work, you would need people to be on the same page. And it seems that in order for everybody to get on the same page, you need something like a four wall method. I could be wrong.
I feel like this is a cross between the two. Well, that's what I wrote down in my notes actually, is that I felt like what we were doing here was a cross between the open air and the four wall method. I kind of feel like too, since like the pandemic and everything, it's a little harder to get around to as many, at least for me, as many people. So going back and forth between practicing the two, I kind of feel this reminds me a lot of the four wall. And then when I'm say just talking to people that I know or in my spare time or in my household, I feel like the open air method is more efficient. But I feel like those came together. Ooh, someone has a loud motorcycle outside. That scared me. I feel like if those two came together, that eventually it could be something very great if we all put our methods in what we were able to do and we just all brought it to the table. We could probably create a great four wall method.
I think the four walls method is possibly advised against, because history has shown me personally that four walls can be obliterated, destroyed, invaded by race soldiers, and everyone taken at the same time. So that's why I wouldn't recommend four walls. I think something in this capacity, and just attempting to get people to get the code book, practice code or listen to some lectures is like safer than trying to gather a bunch of unaware victims and then talk about the code. But then again, maybe these things should be tested and practiced. But that's just my take on it.
If I could add to that, there's plenty of evidence. If you research the term COINTELPRO,
Yeah,
which is the FBI's counterintelligence program, which is still very active, by the way. It goes under a different name, but that would be a great way to start. Is to one book that Dr. Welsing mentions in her book, The ISIS Papers, is called Race Matters.
Racial Matters.
Racial Matters. Thank you. Racial Matters. If you bust open that book, it shows a whole lot of detail about the operations of the FBI with the COINTELPRO program. And there's several other books out there about COINTELPRO that you ought to be able to find, just to see how they divided the organizations up. I see some signs of it working with, are you all, I'm sure you all are familiar with ADOS, right?
Oh,
What? There's your answer.
I see some workings.
That whole thing was all I could think about was ADOS when I was reading like this part of the book. So, sorry.
Yeah. Well, when you're thinking about four-wall method, absolutely. Yeah. ADOS and FBA, the Foundational Black American, the other one, you know, both are kind of put against each other. And ADOS themselves, I just saw a report. Well, I follow ADOS on Twitter. I try to follow all the different groups just to stay hip to, you know, the activities that are going on or whatever. But I noticed that they're about to have a divide now because there's a California version of ADOS that's decided they're breaking away and they don't want to support Antonio Moore or something like that. But that to me is a sure sign of some COINTELPRO activity. If you look at the works of COINTELPRO. So.
Can you give some context? I'm aware of ADOS. I don't know how constructive it is to go off topic on that, but I would like to know more because I'm familiar with ADOS, but I don't really know what's going on with them right now.
Okay, so to me, from my perspective, ADOS and FBA were two groups that were launched to I don't want to say brainwash because I like wash, brain dirty or brain trash the minds of the Black collective because there was a lot of codified activity getting out there. People, they won't give me any credit for it, and I'm not really trying to, I guess, take credit for it, but I've been broadcasting the code for 14 years on YouTube, okay? I was pretty much the first person on YouTube. I was the first person on YouTube to broadcast the code. I used to read from Mr. Fuller's book all the time, excerpts from the code. I'd send code books all around the country to people and stuff like that. And I noticed a movement where I started seeing people starting to use the words, the system of racism, white supremacy. I started seeing people call themselves victims of white supremacy. I was just noticing that. I don't know if all of that was because of me, but I do know that that was going on. And then out of nowhere came Tariq Nasheed. And he was like, his first documentary was called Hidden Colors, and it was called The Religion of White Supremacy. Now, I put a video out called The Religion of White Supremacy like 10 years before that. Okay, and little by little, he started dropping words. He started telling people, you got to get on code. You got to get on code. And he might quote Mr. Fuller here or quote Dr. Welsing here. But I actually asked him a few times, have you read the code? And he hasn't read it. So it was kind of like this thing that just goes out like code, code, code. And then all of a sudden you have the collective like, oh yeah, you got to get on code. You got to get on code. And they don't even know what they're talking about, but they're just telling each other that, right? Then the next move came Yvette Carnell with ADOS. Let me tell you this. Tariq Nasheed came up with the term foundational Black American.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was kind of like taking everybody and saying, hey, get on the code. You got to be with the code, but you're foundational Black American, right? And then Yvette Carnell came back. She's the ADOS so-called leader, supposed to be a congressional aide or something, supposed to know so much about politics and reparations and all this kind of stuff. And everybody just kind of just jumped on board. The people that jumped on board with her, she called them ADOS, which is American Descendant of Slavery, right? And for a little bit, you could see both. I was observing both movements like going side by side, and there really wasn't any conflict between the two. And then all of a sudden there's like Yvette and Tariq started saying a bunch of stuff against each other, whatever, whole lot of drama, right? But the whole point of it is, to me, it all looks to me like, because they got handlers, okay? Tariq Nasheed has a mother-in-law who's a racist suspect, and Yvette Carnell has a lover or whatever who's a racist suspect. So it's
White
like,
captive.
huh?
I said I use the term white captive.
Thank you. A white captor?
Cat. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
A white, yeah. I call them handlers, right? But they got these handlers, and I think that that's where they're getting most of their influence from with all this stuff that they're putting out. And I truly believe that it's like a counter move to the actual United Independent Compensatory Code. Because if it wasn't for them and coming out at the time and saying what they were saying, I truly believe that more Black people would be into the United Independent Compensatory Code right now. Because there's been so much stuff that's been happening. Like the sister said earlier, when you said how usually it's some kind of tragedy or disappointment that brings a person to the organization. It's the same way with the code. Like I know Black people who I've been talking to about the code for years, and they won't listen to me until they're upset. They're upset, that damn Trump, whoop, 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 whoop. And then it gives me a door into talking to them about the code, and they're like, oh yeah, what? You know, they're listening to it. So I hope I gave you some insight. I don't want to keep taking up the space.
No, definitely. Thank you. That was constructive because it definitely cleared up a lot of confusion, at least for me. Because I know, I don't know who the lady was, but I do know Tariq Nasheed, and I have enjoyed some of his stuff in the past, but not recently, especially when he kind of started bringing that up. To me, those whole movements kind of always seem divisionary, or and in some aspects.
Yeah, a great time to remember racially showcased people and how they're used to spread more confusion amongst victims of racism, white supremacy. Confusion to make us think, oh, racism is going away, or it's not that bad, or it has disappeared, or maybe we're not working too hard to escape it enough. But we shouldn't be trying to escape anything. We want the system replaced with justice.
Yeah, also too, lastly on this topic, we can move on, but Dr. Sinkiu, I thought, brought up a good point that, if that wasn't happening, more people would probably be on code, and I agree with that.
It's tragic. Yeah, I wish from what I experienced personally is that the easiest person for me to get on code that I didn't know that well, it was a person from South Central who I would say, like myself, entire life was tragic or full of trauma. But that could just be like rare occurrences, because I have walked around trying to get Black people to read in South Central and it has not been successful. But like what we mentioned earlier, maybe most Black people will only get serious once the mistreatment is at their door in plain sight, because it's always hidden in plain sight in front of us. The mistreatment, the kill Black, attack Black, mistreat Black, but that's it.
So I have a question. Can you explain why the founders of ADOS, I'm not super familiar with these orgs, so I'll have to do more research on them, but why they would classify as being racially showcased if it seems like the orgs are like pro-Black?
Well, I think I just, but yeah, I'll try to re-clarify. But if they are not, for me, if they're not attempting to produce justice, balance between people, if they're spreading more confusion amongst Black people, that's what racially showcased people are intended to do. That's what the racist man, racist woman used them to do.
Yeah. So how
Sure.
do they spread confusion? It's like, you know, making it seem like they're like racism is only affecting some people and not others, or it has affected more people than others, in my opinion.
Making it seem like reparations is going to solve our problems or
I think those are two unfair assumptions about ADOS. They don't believe that reparations is going to solve problems. They just believe reparations is a step to solving the problem of like white supremacy. I'm not defending ADOS. I'm just saying like just wanting to like, you know, have a correct like explanation of them. Nor do they think that it's like a only Black Americans or descendants of slavery are the ones that are suffering under white supremacy. They just believe that everyone else has an advocate. Why can't Black Americans have their own advocates too?
yeah. And to be clear, I don't pay attention to any group that is not that doesn't use the term like producing justice, replacing the system. So I don't know much about ADOS or the history of that. I just follow the code, and the code says if it's not talking about producing justice, then be very suspicious of it.
Oh, could I add something in regards to the four wall and open air? In regards to like this meeting, I think it's like a combination of the two, four wall and open air. We're all united, independent, you know, towards, you know, producing justice, because we might never, you know, like see each other or whatnot. But what I was gonna say is one thing in regards to the four wall method is we indirectly help out the racist suspects because we got to pay them to be in the building that we're going to meet in. And yeah, right. And then also, since we're all attempting to be on code, we know VGQ. So if I start, you know, going off code and name calling and stuff, you know, hey, that's his VGQ. That's what he said. And then, you know, when you go to so-called Black organizations, you hear people get on code, and then you read a page out of this book, they'd be like, "Did you hear this COON? What is he talking about?" That's what would happen. Hopefully, I made some sense.
So, what, Dan? I'm wondering, what do you think about if someone is like really just not on code, especially in front of white people, and it's potentially like causing you harm? Like you can't always VGQ, right? There has to be some parts where you try to like either rein the situation in or something. Like, what do you think?
Okay, well, underneath this system, my sense of morality is a little bit messed up. So it's like if they off code and stuff, sometimes you just got to keep moving forward. You gotta leave them behind, because it takes a while for us to produce a person that can identify this problem. So just like the few of us, I don't know how long it's going to take to produce another person that will come join us. So you got to leave them behind and keep moving forward. Unfortunately, it's a war. You got to take losses.
Yeah.
People that can't abandon anything can't hope to change anything.
Right.
Yeah, well said, Dan. Go back to it.
I just want to say that it is a part of the code to defend yourself, though. Like, it doesn't matter if you're being harmed by a white person or a non-white person. It's very codified to defend yourself. The universe entitles you to that. So, if I was to answer the same question you presented to Dan, I mean, if me thinking about it, first thing I would do is try to make distance, because the code, there's 3 words to minimizing the conflict. 4 words to minimizing the conflict with other non-white people is no contact, no conflict. So the minute it appears that a non-white person is trying to do harm to you, or even a white person for that matter, just step away if you can. Now, if your back's against the wall, then that's when you gotta, throw some blows or do some shooting or something. I don't know.
Oh, I would add, in that case, justifiable homicide, page 188 of the word guide.
Right.
I wrote something 53, something caught my eye on page 53. Where it's when money is collected, much of it is used for purposes other than the elimination of racism. When it was talking about the four-wall method, this actually reminds me a lot of the elections when they always talk about how they're going to do something different, how they're going to combat racism, so on and so forth. I feel like that's what confuses people the most is what they see on the TV when we have our elections. I think that that's what makes it hard to get people codified is they're getting this message on the TV and they think that these people or on the internet or whatever, they think that these people are the powerful people, the ones that can really do something. And I feel like if they wanted to, they could, but they don't want to. And that's what a lot of people really don't understand because they have enough money to get on there, to get to so many people, to get on their computer or on their TV. It's like there's this built-in trust for these figures that these people don't even know. So I feel like that's the biggest thing that they use to keep the system going is these false idols that most of the youth are, I guess you could say, worshiping. And I think as they get older, subconsciously, they don't realize how badly they've been programmed by these false idols. And that's where it's hard to deprogram the white supremacy system out of them.
So, to yes, Sandra, I think that's very well said. But to codify it, I would replace false idols with falsehoods. Um, the system of racism programs people, victims, especially to believe lies, which are things that are not true. And yeah, the I don't know if I'm sure the news area, I'm sure that falls under entertainment, but yeah, that is excellent racist man, racist woman brainwashing or brain trashing tool that um I see my entire victim unit watching white people tell them, inform them on things, and so yeah, you're totally accurate. And also in the entertainment area through activity, I'm very blessed because I didn't grow up watching Disney, and I see the danger in that now in hindsight as I interact with people who have grown up watching Disney, and I think I dodged a huge mental bullet by not receiving that particular programming. But go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say something about money real quick. And they're really going to confuse a lot of victims soon if they end up putting Harriet Tubman on the money. But look who that is on there. That's a dead slave owner right there. That's a dead slave owner. Most of these dollars that we got, these bills right here, they're dead slave owners on it. So this ain't gonna help us solve the problem at all. Because the people that make it, and mind you, they got printing presses, right? They make this. They got printing presses where they can make billions and trillions of dollars every day. They spend millions of dollars to send some satellite to Mars to go find out what's on Mars. They spend millions of dollars a day. I think it's $3 million a day. I can't remember now, but all of that, right? When they could divert that same amount of energy to solve racism, it would probably solve it overnight. It's like, it's not important. It's not important to them, and the four-wall organizations aren't even on that. Because to be honest, a lot of the four-wall organizations are collecting money to go in their pockets. It's not, it's not really going anywhere to help anybody. But yeah, okay. I gotta go, y'all. This was very, very constructive. I so look forward to coming back and talking to you guys again, but I have another meeting at 4:30, so I need to get off.
Oh, no, do you think before you can head out, you could talk a little bit about your time and energy and how you maintained in this struggle for so long?
Oh, well, first off, I recognize that that since I was born in a system of racism, white supremacy, that the majority of my behavior has been dedicated to cooperating with the system of racism, white supremacy. So I just always try to look for those moments that I can resist, and I schedule them. I schedule the moments, you know, when I can resist. Because I mean, I'm, you know, most of the time I'm still doing non-constructive stuff. You know what I'm saying? You know, play video games, watch TV, whatever. I don't watch a whole lot of television like I used to, but I can't watch a television program without thinking about it from the context of white supremacy, though. I have to admit to that. But when I was born, my family was kind of involved in the Black Power movement, so they kind of just brought me up to believe that, you know, fighting for my people was the thing to do. So I kind of just grew up believing that this was my destiny, right? So it hasn't been that difficult at all for me. It's been well, I'm gonna tell you now, it has been starting to be difficult. Like, it was amazing that you asked me the question the other day like you did, because I was starting to think about giving up. I was like, I'm gonna put 14 years into this, making all these videos and all this talking and putting the code books out there and trying to have study groups and everything, and I'm about done. And then you guys came about. A brother, you know, another United Independent sent me a link to your YouTube channel, and that totally motivated me to stay, you know, to stay in the fight. So, but yeah, I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, thank you kindly, and thanks for stopping by. I hope to see you whenever you have the time to come and share insight and talk code.
Absolutely. And the one thing I want to say, it's a beautiful thing to see some females involved in practicing the code. Okay. If we can get more females practicing the code, we'll have a whole lot of brothers just falling right on in. They'll fall right on in.
Yep.
That's been the biggest issue for me the whole time. It's usually, I could have some conversations with some sisters, and they're just not even on that level of even really wanting to even discuss the code. I know some who still have the book that I gave them, and it's still sitting on their shelves. They've never, you know, pulled it down and pulled it out to read it. So anyways, stay strong in the struggle to replace white supremacy with justice. And I'll see y'all next time.
Thank you, Dr. Sinkyu.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you, doctor.
All right, let's keep it going. All right, so I guess that's a great time to move in to time and energy. So my question for all of you is why are you using well, let me just codify the question. In the people area of entertainment, why are you using it? I mean, my bad. In the people area one of economics, why are you using your time and energy to be here?
You said why?
Yes.
Oh, is it?
And then
Why are you using your time and energy to? Oh, well, to produce a constructive result. Honestly, there's a lot of things that, you know, I could be using my time and energy for, and I would say about 98% of those things aren't nearly as constructive as this. So I guess that's why I'm here. and maybe and finding more ways to be, you know, constructive with my time and energy.
I don't feel like anything can be solved or anything can really be that constructive until this problem is solved, the racism, white supremacy, because I feel like people aren't given equal opportunity in jobs, people aren't given equal opportunity to speak, people aren't feeling comfortable when they go outside. So how productive are their lives, no matter how much money they have, no matter what job they're working, no matter what's going on, if they really don't feel fulfilled or like they have a voice when they go outside. So I don't feel like anything is as productive as the system of white supremacy makes it sound, or actually at all, until this is solved. Like we could be living in that world, but we can't live in the world that they advertise to us. We can't live in that world without fixing the problem that they're trying to hide from us. That's why I'm here.
I'm not sure I really understood the question.
Why are you using your time and energy to be here in this meeting at this particular time right now?
Oh, okay.
Before I joined this group, I struggled with purpose in life. I always felt that I didn't know my purpose and I didn't know what I was here for a while. And I thought I would never get out of it. But now I have a more stronger feeling too that my purpose is bigger than me. And this is the time when I feel unconstructive or I don't know what to do with my time. I now can spend time doing more constructive things to counter racism and to study and to figure it out when I feel like I have too much time in my hands to do unconstructive things.
Well said. Thank you, Paris, and everyone who's shared so far. I'm here. I'm using my time and energy to be here because it makes sense for me. I it makes sense. I am a victim of racism. I want to solve the problem. I have the ability to be here, and I have the actual time and energy that I can use to make the reality of me being here. So that's why I'm doing it, and I think I spent a lot of my time. I'm a person who used to spend like 12 hours learning a video game combo. Like it would take me 12 hours just to learn one combo in a video game. So if I could dedicate that time and energy to something like that, that I could dedicate a lot of my time to working to solve the problem. You know,
I'll go. Um, I find this to be a help for me and constructive because before I would, study this material by myself and I didn't have many people to exchange information with and to possibly look into other perspectives. So it definitely helps, expand my brain on trying to get this problem solved. And it also helps too being able to actively put in an input, like I can actually say something versus listening to a recording or an archive. So active feedback.
anyone else want to answer?
The question is, why are you using your time and energy to be here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I, um, like, I mean, I feel like that. Why? Like, of course I should, because if I'm a
Hey, what
victim,
you say in the beginning? I didn't understand that.
like, I like, of course, I don't think about why because I just know I should be here. Like, it's not like I don't know. It just feels like intrinsic that I should like if I'm a victim and I've learned that I'm a victim, now I have to do something about this system. And I thought I've been involved in other types of work, and I feel like this has been something that feels much more constructive.
Alrighty. Anyone else care to answer, or can we get into area one, economics? All right. So time and energy, page 60. These four things. Can we take turns to read the four points here on page 60? And it starts with, as long as white supremacy exists, use all of your time and energy doing the following, and do not willfully make or maintain contact with other persons except for the following purposes. One, producing, building, repairing, improving, and or cleaning those things that have a constructive value and using them for constructive purposes only.
2, studying, writing, asking questions, or exchanging views with others about all aspects of how to eliminate racism and how to produce justice in all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, counter-war.
3, eating and sleeping correctly and only as necessary.
4, engaging in sexual intercourse no more than 2 times every 7 days, and using a minimum amount of time and resources in association with such engagements.
So I like that it's a very short list, and I think um, we'd be hard pressed to find someone who can prove this quote here wrong from 61, where it says bum, 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 if each victim of racism will limit all of his or her activities to none more than the aforementioned, most of his or her problems would be greatly minimized in a very short amount of time. Victims of racism who are serious about eliminating racism, white supremacy, and or who are serious about producing justice cannot afford to engage in any other activities other than the aforementioned. So I believe this to be correct. I think if a lot of victims, particularly victims I know, victims of my family, if they were to just, just truly sit down and think about participating in this list, or just looking at what ghetto glorification means and just making that a list and stop doing things from that list, I think they would have a lot of their problems would diminish, and then like the code says, in a very short amount of time. Any thoughts on this? Let's comment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also
Go ahead.
Yeah, I also agree with that statement. Like, I really think like if we just change our focus and really intentionally follow these things, or not even follow, implement into our lives, there will become more peace. And that's kind of what I'm looking for here in this life, is a little bit peace in all of these areas as I go through and produce justice in as many areas I can. It's just a piece that is over my life, and the areas mentioned, like shelter, all of these other parts too, and finances, because you all know when there's an area that's needs a little more help, like more help than another area of your life, it kind of just feels terrible all over the place. So I think definitely, and also like not indulging in like unconstructive behavior, obviously, when people bring it to you. I don't know how to say that, Greg. Like, someone just brings their junk to your area, and you're kind of like, okay, I don't want to entertain this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you kind of have to like put this boundary up and say, okay, this is not for me. So I believe it.
When someone comes unconstructive, what I do is start talking constructive, and they just kind of remove themselves. So it's just easier to stay in that consistency because then they won't kind of like be like, oh, I can't talk to her because she's gonna say something that doesn't tag along to what I'm saying.
That's that's an interesting point. At work, I noticed that with people, they would talk about unconstructive things, and I would shut it down by just saying something really basic, and it would get them to completely just they either would talk about something different or they would avoid me because it was just so uncomfortable to talk about. It's not like anything was being said that was wrong. It was more just like, this conversation isn't gonna go down right now. That's not what I talk about. I think if we kind of direct the conversation, what we will talk about, what we won't, what's constructive, what's unconstructive, the people that are meant to be in our lives will be there. The people that are meant to walk will go away.
Yeah, that's a great exercise, and from Carice and Sandra to like Sandra, just to give an example. So someone will say something like not constructive to you, and you would just give like a basic response, like a just like or just saying like that's or how would you respond?
For instance, if somebody says something really unconstructive to me, I would say something like, "Do you ever read in your spare time?" And usually the answer is no. And it sounds like you need to start reading because there has some kind of there's some things that you could learn if you spent your time reading. And usually they either stop holding the conversation, but most of the time they actually want to read. Like when you tell them something like that, like when you pose it that way, like that they don't do it by what they've said, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, people can tell that that I don't read, and I feel like it kind of usually it directs the conversation a different direction. Most people.
All right, I like that.
Yeah, to add, I've noticed people, usually the things that people complain about most in their life, especially non-white people, are the things that they want to talk about are really no constructive value. And it's kind of the point where we don't even have anything to talk about because everything that you want to talk about is unconstructive. We can go on and use our time and energy to talk about these unconstructive things, but I'd rather not do that. I'd rather talk about something constructively or talk about something constructive. So I definitely agree with the statement that, if people would focus on, not focus less on non-constructive things and focus entirely on constructive things, a lot of their problems would be eliminated.
For me, the only thing I would wish I could add is like time for some sort of like spiritual nourishment in terms like I think that would have been something that I would have liked to see in there.
He mentions the spiritual early, like in the introduction, or like no, in the codification. He mentions let me just find it really quickly. But someone
No, I mean specifically in the 4 points.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Like ways to use your time.
I agree. That'd be interesting. It seems like his stand, or in my opinion, that we're at a war. So stuff like, is there time to be practicing spirituality? Things like that. I think definitely it's important, but yeah, I think I also would have liked to have seen something like that included.
I think I think it's really important to the I think the code would say that white people have decided to wage a war against us. We didn't wake up and say, "Hey, we're gonna go wage a war against white people." So I say I'm in a war, or white people are waging a war against us. Because I don't have the power to wage a war against. Neither of us in this group has a power to wage war against any group as our positions as victims on planet Earth. So codified language is suggestion is white people or the racist man, racist woman are waging a war against us, victims, non-white people. And also, I would say that when a war is being waged against you, maybe spirituality can be just understood as mindfulness, as in what to do when you're in this kind of situation. You know, how can we be mindful and not succumb to being destroyed by people who are attempting to destroy us by mistreating us, or if you want to use counter war qualification, you say whatever. Does that make sense? That just makes sense, or did I ramble?
Um, Slightly. I would say, you know, maybe ask him, you know, maybe even pose it for the next radio, you know, is in area one economics, where does spirituality fall? You know, I don't know. Maybe that's the question I'll finally ask him. I'll be bold enough to finally ask Neely Fuller a question.
Yeah, because I think I personally have the answer to that, and I think it was mentioned earlier in the codification area. But and also I have asked him something about spirituality in one of the weekly inquires.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure. But time and energy. Any more comments about what we read about this? Anything someone took notes on?
I think it's on 61 when he was talking. Well, the first part when he says racism could continue to exist for a while, but only with great difficulty. A great improvement in the production of justice would be immediately evident. At the same time, each victim of racism would quickly become a stronger and greatly improved person. Like, this is if we have a voluntary and constructive use of our time and energy by a substantial number of victims of racism. And that I just like when I read that, all of these examples and thoughts came to my head, like not contributing to this economy, not contributing to social media, like independently producing, like, you know, our own products and like things like that, like educating our youth. Like, if we spent our time, like a significant amount of our time constructively, like even just if you just think about just the Black people in America alone, like that would be such a significant blow to the white supremacist system. So I really liked that part. And I also liked after that when he talks about victims of racism would no longer with relative ease be sidetracked into and or burdened with activities that are at best useless rituals and or destructive fads. And then he goes on to say things that usually are the product of indoctrination and or long-standing habit, which I love. Like, so accurate. Like, I just thought of every like interaction with like my family and like people I used to call my friends. It's all just like at best useless rituals, and you're like, it's like you have to program yourself to not involve yourself in those like rituals anymore. So I really liked that he like diagnosed it perfectly.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Ash. Because I used to use my time and energy participating in lots of just long-standing habit. My long-standing habit, I just quit. I just quit was I used to wake up and just have like a X amount of time, like a maybe 3 to 4 hour, 2 to 4 hour gaming session playing video games. First thing I do when I wake up, is just like video games. But now the first thing I do when I wake up is much more constructive, and it's just about under like seeing that, having the awareness that hey, this isn't constructive, and then deciding, having that decision moment. Am I gonna change? Am I gonna attempt to improve, or am I gonna remain unconstructive or remain the perfect victim, which is a victim not attempting to do anything constructive?
Yeah. Same thing for me. You know, I had a lot. I can think of a lot of, well, one in particular. When I was a couple years ago, me and my former associates would meet up. You know, doesn't matter what we were doing. Some of us might be coming from work. Some of us might have been sitting home all day, but we would meet up and go to the park and sit in a car for multiple hours and smoke pot. You know, and very unconstructive use of time, a useless ritual, because it honestly was a habit and a ritual because it was something that we did almost religiously, you know, weekly, sometimes multiple times a day, you know. So, you know, where I'm at now, you know, I don't really associate myself with a lot of those people. I don't see them much. Now, you know, I tend to smoke a lot less. You know, I kind of felt under attack in this little section because I do smoke pot occasionally.
Yeah,
So,
just sometimes though.
yeah, just sometimes,
I
right?
got arthritis.
Yeah.
Medical uses for it.
Yeah, so you know, so now, you know, where I'm at now, you know, I only step out maybe for a couple minutes, you know, I might be reading, I want to take a little break, you know, step outside. You know, I don't spend a lot of time doing it anymore. Don't use a lot of resources towards it. Yeah, I just felt like I needed to say that while I was here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true. That's what all victims need to get in the habit of being comfortable with. That truth, you know, that's
Yeah.
the deepest level of Black respect Dr. Francis Welsing says one can have is being able to be honest with yourself, be truthful with yourself.
But what if people
Yes.
don't like that you're honest? You know what I mean? Like
Oh, enough.
some people don't like the blunt honesty or the I don't know, I just think they want you to sugarcoat everything, if that makes sense, or live in a fairy tale world when you're realistic with yourself. It's like I know a lot of people that don't like that about me.
Mm.
I get that a lot too. That's the same thing. People don't like this, but that's just people. I think mentally they're weak, and they don't like hearing anything that disagrees with their programming, and the programming has taught us to be fake, and for it to keep going, we have to lie to ourselves and lie to other people. So I think that that's just a sign that they're trying to reject the programming when they get defensive, because it's not really the messenger that's the problem. If it's the truth, it's the truth, and they need to accept it, and that's in their hand. And to become deprogrammed, they need to realize that they're in control of their reactions. And once they can get control of that, they can get control of their life.
And
I'm so
Dory?
I'm so happy that you guys brought that up. Thanks, Carice and Sandra. I think it's very important, especially I know people come to me and they're like, hey, I have this problem, blah, 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 blah. And I give them constructive advice and and I come to the conclusion is that they don't want to solve their problem, you know. And I already told them I'm not a source to just I'm not interested. Not interested, honestly. Like I don't want to be that. There's some counselors out there. I'm not, you know, I can't be there because you have no intentions to change or no intentions to like level up. You're kind of just like, I want to stay in this spot, but I do want to mope and like cry about it with someone all day for months and years, you know. So,
They
but
just want somebody there to listen. You right.
Yeah, most people want an audience. They don't actually want to like have another person's thoughts in their mind.
right. The energy suckers.
Yeah, and to contextualize this is I understand it as all victims and everyone on the planet has been given a racist logic. People think like a racist, even though they have black skin, even though they're brown, yellow, red. People have been given that's what programming is, receiving a racist way of thinking, hating black people, hating. So when you're given racist logic, the ugliest thing that you could think of is a black person speaking truth, a black person trying to solve problems. Let's look at something Cree said earlier. She said, blunt truth. Why should the truth be associated with a blunt object or a blunt force? I think that's racist logic manifesting there, associating truth with something that is
It's
negative
negative.
when it's just that which is, when it's just the reality, when it's just that which is. So I think that's a good just to understand that we have been programmed heavily against where we're going to be viewed as very, very unpleasant just by speaking the truth, the honest truth that came with the universe, and that history and logic will totally prove us right every time when we say we're living in a system of racism, white supremacy, and the best thing to do about it is to replace it with a system of justice. If anyone says that's not the truth and that's not what needs to be done, then be highly suspicious of that individual.
And then I do have a question I would like to ask the group.
Mhm.
And what I just wanted to know, just so we can start thinking about these now, especially as we keep going through the different areas of people activity and areas that justice needs to happen. So in what areas of people activity are you currently or planning to produce justice? And obviously it could be area or areas, so multiple. And then the follow-up question is like, what have you done in that area, or what are you doing in that area? And I guess I can go first. One of the areas that I like to say that I am producing justice so far is like in the process of research, so education. That is the area that I am currently working on right now, and I plan to continue. And that's like one of the areas of focus. I'm sure there's like other little activities that I've been doing in my life constructively that can produce justice in different areas, but as a focus right now is education, since it's my place of work too.
I think that education is a very important sector to focus on. I think that educating children primarily, because I think that this is where basically their brain computer gets messed up is when they're really young. I think that if we told children one of the things about history, the history gets changed so much. I feel like that's one of the biggest things that children need to realize, is that what they're being taught in school isn't completely true. I think that once they start to understand that, it will be easier to get them to have an open mind and be educated toward an alternate view that isn't what they've always been, taught by the school system, the teachers. I think that that's great, the math, the science, the English, but I think that they need more, how do you say it, specific coaching, specific readings. And this isn't something that the schools are really doing all that much. I think it's up to us, the people, to raise our youth and educate our youth in today's current problem.
To answer the question, what am I doing in a specific area of people activity, or where do I plan to be constructive in? Well, I went to school for health, and to my understanding, health falls underneath the umbrella of economics. So I am in the area of people activity of economics. I am going to try to get people to use their time and energy in more constructive ways in order to lead to more healthier outcomes, whether that be policy making, whether that be health education, whether that be providing more access to the necessary resources in order to live and lead healthier lives. In particular, in the area of economics, how I'm using my time and energy, just me, myself. I'm just trying to, learn more about the problems, so therefore I can create more constructive ways to solve the problem, really, because I don't think I know enough yet to have as much impact as I would, so I'm constantly working towards that.
For me, and the area economics, I've just have made a huge effort to create spaces where victims who are interested have a place to go to potentially receive some constructive information in the form of like this book club, and where I put the book club videos. And the entertainment area, I am writing a book that even if people are not interested in producing justice, the book is coded in a way where it's about the race war. It's about creating justice. It's about victims being mistreated 24/7 and ways they could go about solving it. So that is under entertainment, and that can also be seen as our counter war by creating propaganda against the system, which will and people relations. I hope by creating forums like this, it will improve the how people, Black people especially, relate to one another and treat each other. Um, but yeah, I'm always thinking about my entire life. I'm always thinking about how can I produce justice in this area and when and if I'm going about it in a constructive manner or not. But oh, in Area 8, I don't participate in any thing in Area 8 that will cause more confusion amongst victims of racism. Um, Religion, I don't. I understand the most powerful religion on the planet is racism, white supremacy. So there's many ways I believe that I'm attempting to solve this problem and produce justice.
I'll go. I'm kind of all over the place, but I would say, well, being in this book club is like education and people relations. I also, I guess, entertainment because I'm an artist, so I guess it falls in there in terms of like the art I'm trying to make at least. Also in the past, I would say that I used my time and energy. I don't know what area of activity. I guess this is people relations, but I was, or I still am, a doula. So I was at least making sure that Black babies are being born in environments that are not totally hostile, or at least slightly less hostile. And I used to do a lot of work in terms of provide or like making sure people have housing and stay in their house, even if their landlords are trying to evict them. So I guess that's law or politics. But right now, most of it is based in, I guess, education with my daughter.
Um, I'll say probably education and economics. Um, for education, I try to, as well as my daughter, for my nephews that are old enough, try to get them informed and stay education on the system that they're not going to learn a lot of things. So since they lack the learning of their history and the Black history, I try to fill in what I know and give them things that they can learn that probably the school system won't teach them. Economics, since I did medical assistant and I'm trying to recertify, um, I try to help people with what they lack or the deficiencies that they lack in their body, as well as always try to let them know that they mentally have to take care of themselves as well as emotionally, physically. So I always try to have a healthier route in life. Um, for what we still do to this day as a family unit, we have a lot of bottles we collect. Due to us, we drink a lot of water. We have stacks of bottles of empty bottles. So what we do is we have a container at our house where the homeless can come pick it up, or we bag everything for them and give it to whoever's around that is homeless that comes around on trash day that needs it. If I can't like base them off a shelter or give them X, Y, and Z, I'll give them these bottles that I know that they need to collect money. So that's something I've been doing since young, and we still do it to this day.
And I would add for myself, um, I'd say the area of education, because uh, besides like reading this book, that takes up the rest of my time. And yeah, that's all I got.
Great question, Ray. Um, do we have any more comments on time and energy, or can we close out?
I think the last comment I have for time and energy, and then close out, but it's just, I think it's important, like especially for myself, as I read this section, is really think about it, like sometimes I just do stuff just to do it, like, oh, I normally read, so I'm just gonna read, or I normally do this, I normally do that. Like I know things that are like constructive things that I do, I just do them. But I think it's like really, I'm not sure who mentioned it earlier, but really putting time aside, especially for some other projects that I have in mind outside of like reading and school and all those other things, is constructive value of things that I have, is just like really setting 10 minutes at least, to work on those projects, because I keep pushing them on the back burner, but I think it'll be very helpful to have those.
Yeah, for me, the last thing that I wanted to just mention was just the part about what he called begging, emergency compensatory investments, and how at pretty much under no circumstance should you steal or rob from somebody, white or non-white. I thought that was an important part and definitely needs to be mentioned.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I have a question. I just remembered. Thank you, Kwaku, for mentioning that part. And there was another part that talked about was following the steal and robbing, and it also mentioned like there should be no mercy to the individual or to the persons who have done that or are doing that. And it's just like makes me think. So if there's no mercy from the code, like what would be like the ideal, like, I don't want to say punishment. That's like, you know what I mean? Like the ideal like result of that, because they came up, insurance came with the prison system. But what ideal result do you guys believe like could follow that?
I need to clarify the question. Can you restate it again?
I think I get you. If we was to replace the system, what would be the end results if somebody tries to,
Steal or rob?
something like that?
Oh, go ahead, please.
I feel like if we was to replace the system, everything that someone lacks would not exist. Like we wouldn't have to steal or rob, because I feel like a lot of us wouldn't lack anything that we need to steal or rob, unless it's something mental. And then if it's something mental, then that's, I feel like then you'll need mental help for that issue. So mental, institutions, not like the bad ones, but that's really just trying to help you mentally.
To answer the question, I think that like Carice was saying, once the system of justice is in place, there really isn't going to be any reason that you would need to rob or steal from somebody. I think the main reason people are stealing and robbing from each other is because of the system of racism, white supremacy. Leave it, having them like suscepting them to mistreatment. So under a system of justice, that wouldn't exist. Therefore, people wouldn't need to steal or rob from one another, because there would be balance between all people. What another person has, you have. So.
Did anyone else want to answer? Because I had a question.
Ray, what's the question?
Yeah, so I was asking, I'm not sure what page it was on, but we're going off of like the stealing and robbing section, and it said in there that those who steal or rob or should receive like no mercy, and white supremacy replace like no mercy as like they're resulting in like the prison system. So under a system of justice, what would be like the result of that?
No, I don't know. That's my answer.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I would definitely say, Ray, that it's a really good question, you know, because those are things that I specifically like ask myself a lot, you know, like what does a system of justice and correctness look like? Or, you know, what is the system that what does it look like, you know, if we replace this system of white supremacy, racism, white supremacy. So I have to agree with Swa. You know, I really have no idea what that possibly might look like. You know, I do know that it definitely will be better than the system that we are currently in. I know that for a fact. But as far as, you know, because it's almost childish and foolish to say that, you know, all of the negativity and, you know, all of the bad stuff in the world is going to go away. You know, I don't think. I mean, who knows? Who knows? But yeah, I would definitely have to agree with Swan and say I don't know what that would look like. You know, and I don't think, you know, it's even really possible because this is the only system that, you know, human beings have known for 2,000 to 4,000 years. So what does another system look like?
Well, I think that what Ezekiel said, or sorry, what Kwaku said, like a majority of people rob and steal because they don't have money or they don't have access to those things that they're trying to get. So in a society that's just, you would have access to those things, most likely like they would be free and accessible for everyone. So I think that would be like the basis for, but I feel like, yeah, there's going to be, but I also feel like if most people are on code to the point like that justice has been produced or white supremacy has ended, then there wouldn't be a glorification or desire for material things anyway. Like you wouldn't want to steal a luxury car because your idea of luxury, that's not luxury anymore, right? Because it's like, think about the conditions it was made in, the like where those products came from, the type of like, you know, blood that was let to produce those products. Your whole perception of like what is luxury and what is like valued would be completely different. I'm also hoping that a system with justice wouldn't really have like money per se, but that's another thing. Oh, and then I had a question. Um, so I know you're not supposed to steal or rob, but what if it is in the like what if you have to rob as a tactic of like counter war? Like what if you need material that you cannot just buy? If you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I totally do. The answer can be found on the constructive value that can be received, and what are you trying to do when you are when you need to go about it and stealing or robbing. But we're a long ways from counter war. In the book, and in actuality, I would I would say, but yeah, great question. I'll give it. If people want to answer, go for it.
I would have to, you know, go agree with Swa. Maybe how constructive is it going to be? You know, what constructive value does it have? You know, I think maybe this section about robbing and stealing was mainly put in here, you know, to prevent, you know, conflict between non-white people and to prevent, you know, not more non-white people dying. But I do, in my opinion, I do understand that there are times when, you know, stealing is or robbing may be the only option that you have. in that case, you know, stealing or robbing to get resources that you absolutely need to defeat this problem or solve this problem. And, you know, in my opinion, I think it's justifiable and it's constructive.
What about squatting? Is that considered stealing?
Squatting?
Yeah. Like if you don't have a home.
I mean, I don't think so, because isn't it technically legal? Like, aren't aspects of it legal? Like,
ain't it like past 30 days? If you squatting somewhere, then they can't kick you out or something.
You have to like put your name on the utilities or something.
Yeah,
that's
I think squatting can be considered just because a person, all persons on a planet have a just right to seek comfort and to have a place of shelter. So I think that is a just act. I think sometimes stealing for food can be a just act, you know, but many times I do not think the people who are robbing and stealing have attempted to do what the code suggests doing, which is let me read this part. Um 3, this is from the points. If we this is from if you do not have constructive employment, and or if you are without the things you must have for constructive self-support, food, garments, shelter, etc., do one or more of the following, preferably in the following sequence. So I think I'm just gonna read all 3 of them, but the one I highlighted was the last one. It says go wherever necessary to seek constructive temporary shelter, housing from someone whom you believe can afford to provide you with constructive temporary shelter, a hut, a room, a tent, a shed, a cabin, a shack, etc. Go wherever necessary to seek constructive employment, job, etc. that will help you to receive constructive support, food, garments, shelter, transportation, medicine, constructive information, etc. Number 3, seek to make compensatory emergency investment requests, so-called begging or pleading from white people who you have reason to believe can best afford to help you receive the most constructive support. This support should include information and other assistance that will help you to constructively support yourself. So it's just some options that we can take besides feeling like we must still rob or kill to get what we need, especially from other black and non-white people.
Oh, I would add, in regards to that question, it might be, I would think of it as compensating. You're trying to make up for what's missing, but you shouldn't be robbing or stealing from another non-white person. I mean, it's wrong to do anyways, but if you're gonna have to do that, you should do it to a racist suspect. They're the ones with the resources. And in regards to squatting, like at this point in the system, if I was homeless, I would put like on a sign, I'm homeless because of the system of racism and white supremacy. And then I would see how many donations I would get. That's how I think underneath this system. So I don't know.
Yeah, in the community, if somebody runs out of money, I've always known where people would say that they feel less guilty taking from the corporation than they do from the person, because like their friends really don't have any more than them when it gets down to it, but the corporations are kind of the reason why they don't have anything. So if it got down to that point, it seems like, the people who have more money are really, it does kind of like the county building, like, go get your scraps. But I feel like the corporations are so guarded against that because they know what they're doing. That's why there's always cameras, and that's why there's always people doing that. So I feel like, people have to be careful with their ideas of, taking the power back. But if, you know, worst came to worst, definitely take from the person who has money before taking from the person who doesn't.
Yeah, that makes total logical sense. And the system of racism, that's what we want. Black people, non-white people making logical decisions. That's all. That's all we want. Logical thinking, logical behavior. That's how we're gonna produce justice. Um, Closing comments.
I can start. For my closing comment, the first part of the book, or which I would kind of call the introduction before we get in the area of the areas of people activity, it's very good. I enjoyed a lot of the explanation. I've listened to Neely Fuller for quite some time now, but I haven't read his book, so put it into context a lot of the things I've been hearing and gave me a deeper understanding. Also allows me to be more codified. I'm looking forward to, reading the areas of people activity. Economics seems to be very interesting so far. It's gone off to a great start. And just, learning how I can be more constructive in these areas of people activity. Therefore, so I can, stop being dominated by white supremacy. Yeah, I find myself lately, like Ash and Dan were saying at one of the meetings a couple of days ago, like realizing, that I'm being, dicked around by white supremacy, but not knowing what to do about it. And that is becoming more and more apparent to me every day that, these people are, white supremacy is here again, just dicking me around, and I have no idea what to do about it. I don't know if that was a best phrase, but yeah. But, yeah, for lack of a better word. Yeah. Good. That's my closing comment.
I can do my closing comment as well. Just to close off, is just being intentional about my time and energy spent, and really focusing and thinking about ways to produce justice as I read through all these books, and obviously read through the code book in all the areas of people activity. And yeah, I have to agree with Ezekiel. It's like now I'm more apparent of like even today I had a conversation with some people from school, like professors, and I just like, damn, white supremacy is working so hard right now. But I had no idea how to respond and like how to like really decode the situation. It's like I know they're doing something, but what am I like? I don't know what to do. I'm just like, ooh. So yeah, I'm reading. I got something coming for them. Give me a day.
For my closing comment, I would like to read this quote. Don't fight unnecessary battles. Don't oppose non-existent opposition. The problem is not trauma. The problem is not colonialism. The problem is not the Jews controlling capitalism. The problem is racist men and racist women dominating the entire planet through racism, white supremacy. Call it what it is. That's the best thing to do. Call it what it is. It's not reptilians. It's not evil shapeshifters. It's racist men and racist women who practice racism, white supremacy.
Like one of the things, or the main things that I got out of it, were that education is one of the main mental blocks to understanding racism, white supremacy. Also, adequate shelter, adequate food, those types of things are very important. I think before someone can begin to understand, they need to be in the right mindset, and without having the necessities that they have to survive. I think that's how they get a lot of non-white people off of this mindset of being alert, is the fact that they're just constantly distracted trying to figure out how to get the basic necessities of life, that the big picture is just so distant. Another thing that I got out of it, just through the passages or what I made of it, was to be aware of people, non-white people, that they use as distractions. I feel like there's a lot of people who won't listen because they would rather listen to the person that they think is doing the same thing in the media, but they're not really doing that. So I think that once people are more in touch with themselves, more in touch with the things that we talked about, limiting doing, I think it will be easier to see the differentiation and what they see on the TV versus what somebody who is actually devoted to solving this problem sees. That's it for me.
I like that I learned more details of coding things and putting things into terms and what more can we do. Um, I need to learn more about economics. I mean, of course, I know economics is the people, animals, etc. But just to put it more in detail of what can I contribute to each area so I can be more constructive.
For me, I really enjoyed this section. Um, I really like the way he broke down the four wall method. It was like very methodical, and it actually was at an interesting time because I was learning a lot about different organizations that are happening right now. So it may help me contextualize them a lot better. And I'm excited to go deeper into like area one. So
All right, I'll go. One of the things I liked in this section or in this meeting, I liked how we went over the four wall and open air method. And then another thing I would add, in my time attending, I think we're all doing a good job of being on code. And by that, I mean, we know VGQ between all of us, and we haven't done no name calling. So I think that right there is going in the right direction of getting this problem solved, especially with the no name calling, because I know the usual suspects, they're listening in and like they haven't name called each other yet. So they might be going in the right direction. We gotta have to figure out something for them. But that's what I would add.
All righty. All right. Thanks everyone for that really, really insightful study.